Are you an overwhelmed project manager trying to keep your tasks straight and wondering what you should take on next? If so, this week's episode of Better Projects Today is for you. Better Projects Today is the bite-sized project management podcast helping you to bridge theory and practice in your own work to create better teams, better results, and better projects today. I'm Tyler Norman, and I bring 15 years of experience as a global program leader and serial mentor to project professionals. First things first, let's address the gap since our last episode. It's been about 4 weeks, and in the spirit of prioritization, I'll share for the last 4 weeks, I have been on FMLA caring for a family member who had a major surgery. I'm happy to share that it went great, they did well, and they healed quickly. But in the spirit of prioritization, I decided it was time to focus on that and come back to the podcast after that time was done. With that, in this episode, I'm going to share 5 models for personal task prioritization that I use depending upon the specific context and time that helps me keep my priorities straight, make sure that I'm serving, sometimes mini masters when you're on a lot of projects, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And lastly, that I stay sane. In the project management world, you often end up with lots of projects and lots of bosses as a result of that. And knowing how to balance prioritization amongst all of those different roles you play is extremely important. With that, let's start with the first way that I prioritize, and that's simple, prioritization by role. And for this, I'm actually going to back up out of the workplace and talk about how I prioritize at a much more holistic whole life level. I think about my role and I think about at the very top, I am a family member. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son to my parents, I'm a sibling to my siblings, and that's one of my roles. Next, I have my role with Scholastic Inc. That is my job. It's, my most important. It's how I provide, economic stability to my family. And then there are some other roles I play. I've got the role of an amateur triathlete, a way that I stay in shape, the role of a side hustle, of the podcast, of event speaking. I talk to companies and organizations about how to use project management principles to navigate their own careers. Those are all fun things, but when I think about my roles, that one of father, spouse is obviously at the top, and then my role with Scholastic, and then from there, when you organize in that way, it helps you keep things straight. And for me, I know over the last few weeks, my role as a father has been the most important, and that made it very simple to set aside some of the other things, like the podcast, knowing that I could come back to it and the role I have there is less important than that of a father. Think about that in your own work. Maybe you have a role of a program leader. You have a role as direct functional boss to a few folks. You have a role of mentoring others. I'm not going to tell you which should be at the top, but if you prioritize by role, that can help you make sure that you are taking care of the people most important to you. Next, and this is something that I picked up at a project management conference many, many years ago, but it's the idea of you have 3 balls to juggle. And you can visualize your responsibilities as 3 different types of balls that you're juggling at any given time. And some of those tasks or responsibilities will be rubber balls. They can bounce right back if you drop them. They bounce up easy. It doesn't make a lot of noise. These are tasks that are going to have a less immediate impact. You can delegate, it's an email that needs to be sent. It's an admin task. If you drop it, it's not a big deal. Nobody's going to notice. Next, you have wooden balls. These are kind of in the middle. They're not going to blow up in your face if you miss it, but it could make a lot of noise when it hits the ground and a lot of people could notice. These are things like important meetings that you have people on, long-term planning, strategic sessions that don't necessarily need done immediately, but if you push them, a lot of people are going to see that and it's not going to look great. Lastly are the glass balls. These are the non-negotiables. These are the things that if dropped, it's going to break and you're not going to be able to put it back together the same way again. These are key project deadlines with major financial implications. These are safety requirements that could have massive impact if not taken care of. These are family obligations. For me, the time I took out, that's not a time I could get back if I decided to drop the ball. It could be a client meeting for a key client. These are the things that need to take priority. And if you need to drop some of the other balls to keep these in the air, that's what you have to do. This is a framework I use with my direct reports a lot as a simple to understand, simple to use method of let's go through your responsibilities and talk about what's rubber, glass, wooden, so on and so forth. The third model, the Eisenhower matrix, and this is one that is a little bit more detailed, but I find is important to understand what tasks I'm not going to do at all. So the Eisenhower matrix is essentially plotting on a matrix urgent versus important. So you end up with 4 squares. And those items or those responsibilities that are urgent and important, those are the priority. You do those tasks immediately because they're critical, they're important, and they're urgent, requiring your immediate attention. Not urgent, but important. These are tasks that go into your task management system because they are important. You do need to get them done. They might have deadlines around them, but they're not urgent. They don't need to be dealt with right this moment. So they're less time sensitive. You can put them into the task management system. Urgent, but not important. These are tasks that demand immediate attention, but don't necessarily contribute to your larger goals. These are great components that you might look at delegating. If they're not important, there's something that you don't necessarily need to do yourself, and you could look at delegating to one of your direct reports or someone who needs experience in that realm. Those are great candidates for that kind of thing. Lastly, and this is where I find the value in this structure, there are going to be some tasks that are not urgent and not important. And these are tasks that you need to look and see if it's at all possible to just eliminate them. Just don't do them. Just treat them as the distraction they are that will waste your time without providing value. One of the most dangerous things when it comes to task management is not taking too long to get through something or not having a task management system. It's spending the time managing and producing work that was never needed in the first place. So with this Eisenhower matrix, you can think about work in terms of how should I treat it? And most importantly, should I do anything with it at all? Or should I look to eliminate that task because it's neither urgent nor important? On to the fourth recommendation, and this is inspired from a famous quote by Mark Twain: eat the frog. And that's essentially the logic is tackle the hardest, most dreaded task of the day first. And the idea behind it's very simple. If you tackle your most difficult challenge right away, the rest of the day feels easier by comparison. This is really relevant in project management because we often face tasks that are complex or time sensitive, have high stakes, and by addressing that tough stuff first, you give yourself the best chance to succeed and reduce procrastination. For me, I find it just reduces anxiety. Another important thing here that comes along with eating the frog is understand when you have the best energy and when you are best suited to take on big tasks. While everybody's different, and there are certainly some people who late in the day are more equipped to do these kind of big, complex, weedy tasks, I found that most people, myself included, are going to have better luck trying to do it first thing in the morning. You've got the coffee, you're well rested. Depending upon your company culture, you may find that you have fewer meetings and distractions early in the morning. So for me, I find that when I look at my day, whatever that thing is that gives me the most anxiety, I try to knock that out right off the bat. And then I work my way into simpler items as the day goes on, and I know that my energy level is going to start to drop over time. Lastly, and to me, this is the most important rule in task management to keep things simple, is the 2-minute rule. And this is popularized by David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done. It's essentially a rule that states if any task is going to take 2 minutes or less to complete, do it immediately. Very simple, very to the point, but it can drastically reduce procrastination and make your productivity better. Email is the biggest place that this makes sense. And there are a lot of good things you can do around not having your email up, go back and look at it a couple times a day. But when it comes to the 2-minute rule, if I'm going through a list of emails and there's something quick, I don't want to put it in my task management system. I don't want to think about when I can fit it in. I want to be done with it. I want to get it out of the way. So when I have a long to-do list, especially as an example, I just came back from 4 weeks out of the office. I had a massive to-do list, literally thousands of items. The first thing I did was go through and look at what was not urgent and not important. Again, a reference to the Eisenhower matrix. And I either delegated if it needed to happen or I just got rid of it. And then next I went through with the 2-minute rule, and I spent half my day on the 2-minute rule because there were a lot of tasks there, but I eliminated all the small tasks and got rid of them. And that's really effective as a way to clear out those little items and give yourself time to focus on the big items that really really matter. In conclusion, managing priorities is a dynamic process, and there's not a one size fits all solution. Each person that hears this is going to have their own best way of managing tasks. And you might actually find that that best way changes over time. If you've got a bunch of small projects and then you start to transition into fewer larger projects, your task prioritization may need to change with that. But if you go about it in a way that is structured and is based on a model that you can apply over time, you'll be able to work smarter, not harder, and it'll help you determine which tasks need dealt with now, which ones can wait, which ones can be delegated, and which you should get rid of entirely. That brings us to the end of the episode. If you have a model that I didn't mention and that you find works really well, drop it in the comments. Also, if you have a topic you'd like to see in a future episode of Better Projects Today, throw that in the comments as well.